My name is Sophia Jenkins, and today I stand before you as a woman who has just stepped into marriage, but also into a storm I never imagined. Picture this: a wedding hall lit by golden chandeliers, tables adorned with lilies and hydrangeas, laughter echoing as friends cheer. In the center, Jason, my husband now, and I hold the knife together, cutting into our wedding cake. From the outside, it looked like a perfect moment. Yet inside me, there was an emptiness, a hollow note in the middle of the music. Because in that crowd of smiling faces, one absence screamed louder than any applause. My family was not there. Not my mother, not my father, not even my sister. All the seats reserved for them were left vacant, like unhealed wounds on display. As the knife pressed through the frosting, I felt my phone vibrate in the hidden pocket of my gown. One notification lit up the screen. "We need to talk. Now." It was from my mother. Beneath it, 36 missed calls stacked one after another. My chest tightened. Why now? Why today of all days? Before I explain how it came to this, how my parents chose my sister's party over my wedding, you need to know the story behind the silence. You need to understand the cracks that had been forming for years until this day shattered them completely. I grew up in what outsiders thought was a picture-perfect family in suburban Ohio. Every Christmas, we posed in matching sweaters for cards sent to relatives. Every summer, we packed the car and drove to the beach, coming home with sunburns and sand in our shoes. To the world, we looked like the ideal American household. But inside those walls, I always felt invisible. I had a younger sister, Harper, 3 years behind me. If childhood were a fairy tale, Harper was the crowned princess from the day she was born. With her golden curls, dimples, and stage-ready charisma, she sparkled in every room she entered. Ballet recitals, violin solos, talent shows. She was the sun everyone orbited around. I never envied her beauty or talent. What cut deepest was the difference in how our parents treated us. I still remember holding the acceptance letter for the advanced science program in high school. My heart swelled as I told Mom, expecting pride, maybe even celebration. She looked up briefly from adjusting Harper's dance costume. "That's nice, honey. Leave it on the counter for Dad." That same week, Harper came third in a small local dance competition. My parents popped open champagne at dinner and toasted to "our little star." I sat there, silently, poking at my food, wondering why my achievement was just paperwork while hers was magic. It wasn't just once. It was the pattern of my entire upbringing. When I graduated high school with honors, they skipped the ceremony. Harper had a recital the same day. Mom's words still echo. "You understand, right? This is really important for her future." Yes, I understood. But understanding didn't stop the ache. By college, I had accepted my role in the family hierarchy, the background child. Phone calls home always drifted toward Harper's auditions, her victories, her life. I built my own world instead. I dove into biomedical engineering, found friends who noticed me, and learned to stand on my own. During senior year, when I graduated summa cum laude, I saved 3 seats for my parents and Harper. On the morning of the ceremony, a text arrived. "We have to drive Harper to New York. We're so proud of you, though. Take pictures." Only one seat was filled, by Naomi, my best friend. She became the family I wished I had. Fast forward to my mid-20s. I met Jason at a friend's birthday party. He had kind brown eyes and a laugh that seemed to make the whole room brighter. On our third date, I told him the truth about my family, bracing for awkward silence. Instead, he reached across the table, squeezed my hand, and said firmly, "That's not normal, Sophia. You deserved better." His words cracked open something inside me. For the first time, someone didn't minimize my pain. He validated it. With Jason came healing. He encouraged therapy. Dr. Winters, my therapist, taught me about emotional neglect, the invisible wounds that shape how we see ourselves. I learned about radical acceptance, letting go of hope that my parents would suddenly become people they were not. It was painful, but freeing. Jason's family embraced me too. His mother calling just to chat, his father sending me science articles, his sister Olivia treating me like her own. For the first time, I felt what it was like to be truly welcomed. 2 years into dating, Jason proposed in the most thoughtful way. At the small theater where we'd had our first date, the movie stopped mid-screening. A homemade trailer of our photos and moments filled the screen, ending with Jason on one knee holding a ring. Through tears, I said yes as the audience clapped. That night, basking in champagne and joy, anxiety crept in. I had to tell my family. The call was colder than I imagined. "Oh, congratulations. That's nice," my mother said flatly. I mentioned a spring wedding. She countered with Harper's new theater role. My engagement was overshadowed in seconds. Still, I mailed the invitations, held on to hope. They gave vague promises, non-committal answers. My father wasn't sure about the dance schedule. My mother would try to make it. Harper hardly replied to texts. Deep down, I still hoped that a milestone of a wedding would finally pull them closer. But weeks before the ceremony, Instagram shattered me. Harper, grinning, flashed a diamond ring. He asked, I said yes, engagement party this Saturday. The comments from my parents, "So proud of our baby girl," burned into me. The party date, the exact same day as my wedding. When I called my mother, she pretended confusion, suggested maybe I should reschedule my wedding, my own wedding, for Harper's engagement party. The request was so absurd it left me speechless. They insisted family comes first. What they meant was Harper comes first. And that is how I arrived at this day, in my white dress, cutting my cake with Jason, while my phone vibrated with 36 missed calls. Everyone who was supposed to stand beside me had chosen my sister. But now, suddenly, they all wanted to talk. What had happened? Why now? I didn't know it yet, but the truth waiting at the end of those calls would change everything I thought I knew about my family, my sister, and the years of neglect I had endured. The night after I saw Harper's engagement announcement, I barely slept. My chest ached with disbelief. Of all the dates she could have chosen, why did it have to be the exact same day as my wedding? And why had my parents, who had promised, however weakly, that they'd come to mine, suddenly shifted their entire energy toward Harper's celebration? I told myself over and over that it couldn't be intentional, that maybe it was a misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew better. I dialed my mother, my hands trembling. She picked up on the second ring, her tone almost cheerful, until she realized it was me. "Mom, is Harper engaged?" I asked, though I already knew. A pause. Then her voice, airy and dismissive. "Oh, you saw the post?" "Yes, Patrick proposed at that vineyard upstate. It was so romantic." "And why?" I pressed, my throat tightening. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" She sighed. "You've been busy with your own wedding plans. We didn't want to add to your stress." I swallowed hard. "What about this weekend? Your comments said you're celebrating." Another pause. "Harper's having a small engagement party. Just family and close friends." "This Saturday?" My voice cracked. "Mom, that's my wedding day." Her answer came wrapped in false confusion. "Oh, dear, I thought your wedding was next weekend. Harper has had this date in mind for weeks now." The logic didn't add up. How could she plan it weeks ago if she only got engaged last weekend? But when I pushed back, my mother's voice turned defensive. "Well, they knew they were getting engaged. They just made it official now. And honey, would it be possible for you and Jason to reschedule? We've already paid deposits for Harper's party, and people have made arrangements." I nearly dropped the phone. My wedding had been booked for months. Contracts signed, deposits paid, 60 guests confirmed. And here was my mother, suggesting that I should move the entire day to make room for Harper's engagement party. Not her wedding, her engagement party. "No," I said flatly, "we're not rescheduling. This is our wedding day. We've worked so hard to make it happen. You RSVP'd. Dad is supposed to walk me down the aisle." Her sigh on the other end was heavy, as though I were being unreasonable. "Well, we'll have to figure something out. But you know how important this is for Harper. She's dreamed of this moment for years." "And I haven't?" I snapped, unable to hold back the sting. "I've been planning this for months. Doesn't that matter?" She responded with a maddening calm. "We'll try to make it to part of your ceremony at least. Maybe we can split our time." The call ended not with comfort or reassurance, but with me staring at my phone in disbelief, my stomach twisted in knots. I dialed Naomi immediately. She was outraged on my behalf. "This is insane. An engagement party is nothing compared to your actual wedding. They can't expect you to reschedule." "What should I do?" I asked, my eyes burning. "Nothing. You go ahead with your wedding. If they choose Harper's party, that's on them. But Sophia, listen, I will be there. I will stand beside you every second of that day. You are not alone." Jason, too, was furious but steady when I told him. His eyes flared with anger, then softened as he held me. "Your family is making a choice, and it's the wrong one. But our wedding will still be beautiful because it's about us. Even if they don't come, we'll be surrounded by people who love us." "What if none of them show up?" I whispered, voicing my darkest fear. "Then we still get married," he said firmly. "We still celebrate, because the most important people, us, will be there." Days blurred into final preparations. My dress fittings, the florist meetings, the cake tasting, all should have been joyful milestones. Instead, they were shadowed by unanswered texts, calls that ended quickly, and a sickening realization that my family wasn't coming. Harper didn't answer at all, except for a short message after I congratulated her. "Sorry, everything's already set for the party. Maybe you could come after your reception. It'll be epic." That was the breaking point. I didn't respond. The casual disregard, the arrogance of suggesting I could attend her engagement party during my own reception, it was too much. Then came my mother's final text 3 days before the wedding. "We'll try to stop by your ceremony if we can get away from Harper's setup. Family comes first." The irony of those words cut like glass. To them, family meant Harper. I was little more than an afterthought. The rehearsal dinner arrived. The historic venue glowed with candlelight, the wooden floors polished, the flowers arranged exactly as I had imagined. Jason's family filled the space with warmth and laughter, hugging me as though I were already their daughter. Meanwhile, my side of the aisle stood empty. When the coordinator asked, "Is your family running late?" I lied and said yes, though bitterness coated my tongue. We waited. They never came. At 5:30, we started without them. Jason's cousin, only 12, played ring bearer with comic seriousness, making everyone laugh. My friends filled in the gaps, cheering me on, but the absence of my parents was a physical ache in my chest. At dinner afterward, Jason's parents had reserved seats for my family.
Seeing those empty place cards was unbearable. Quietly, Jason's mother removed them and rearranged the seating so the table looked full. She caught my eye and gave me a small, kind smile. That silent gesture nearly undid me. Naomi sat at my side, chattering with Jason's relatives, distracting me when my smile faltered. She squeezed my hand under the table. "Tomorrow will be perfect," she whispered. "I will be at your hotel at 9 sharp with coffee and breakfast. You'll walk down that aisle like the most beautiful bride Boston has ever seen. I promise." I clung to her words, because without them, I might have broken down entirely. That night, back at the hotel, Jason kissed me before heading to his best man's room. Tradition dictated that we not see each other until the ceremony. Tomorrow, we'll be husband and wife. That's all that matters. Alone, I made my last call. My father picked up after several rings, his voice distracted. "Dad," I began, my throat tight, "are you still planning to walk me down the aisle tomorrow?" The silence stretched. Then his words landed like a hammer. "I'm sorry, Sophia. Your mother needs me at Harper's party. There's so much to do. You know how important this is for your sister." I bit down hard, my voice cracked. "More important than your daughter's wedding?" "That's not fair," he said stiffly. "We didn't realize the dates conflicted." "There is no conflict," I snapped. "You made a choice." The line went dead a few moments later. I sat there in my bridal suite, staring at the wall. Hollowed out by grief, I couldn't even cry anymore. My family had abandoned me. But I didn't know then that worse was yet to come, that betrayal could come not only from blood, but from the very friend who had sworn to stand by me no matter what.
The morning of my wedding dawns with pale light seeping through the hotel curtains, though I hardly felt rested after the night before. My phone lay silent on the nightstand. No calls from my parents, no apology from Harper, nothing but a heavy reminder that the people who were supposed to walk with me into this new chapter had chosen to be somewhere else. At 9 sharp, there was a knock on the door, and for a heartbeat, I thought maybe Naomi had arrived early with her promised coffee and breakfast. Instead, when I opened the door, it was Allison Turner, a friend from college I had invited more out of nostalgia than expectation. She stood there smiling with a tray of bagels and coffee, but her smile faltered when she saw the tears still clinging to my lashes. "Whoa, Sophia, are you okay?" she asked, and just like that, the fragile composure I had held onto cracked wide open. I burst into tears, sobbing into her shoulder as she set the food down and pulled me into a hug. Between gasps, I told her everything about my parents abandoning me for Harper's engagement party, about my father refusing to walk me down the aisle, and worst of all, about Naomi's vague text the night before that hinted she might not make it in time. I confess how terrified I was of standing there utterly alone. Allison held me at arm's length and looked straight into my eyes. "Your family and Naomi are making terrible choices," she said firmly, "but I am here. If you'll have me, I will be your maid of honor today." The generosity of that offer stunned me. Someone I had not leaned on in years was willing to step into a role others had promised and abandoned. I nodded, speechless with gratitude, and she grinned. "Good. Now drink your coffee while I call the stylist and makeup artist. We are going to make sure you have the wedding you deserve." The hours that followed blurred into motion. The stylist transformed my tear-swollen face into a radiant version of myself. Allison pins my veil with gentle hands, telling funny stories from college to keep me laughing. By the time I slipped into my lace gown, I almost felt like the bride I had always dreamed I would be. Almost, because the hollow ache of my parents' absence never truly left. Just as I was adjusting the hem, there was another knock at the door. This time it was Robert, Jason's father, dressed sharply in his tuxedo. His kind eyes softened as he spoke. "Jason told me your dad might not be here today. I don't want to intrude, but if you'd like, I would be honored to walk you down the aisle." The lump in my throat grew so large I could barely answer.
"I would be honored," I whispered back, tears shining once more. He nodded, clearly emotional himself. "But honor is all mine. You are already part of our family, Sophia. Today just makes it official." At the venue, guests filled the seats, Jason's family laughing and chatting, my friends adjusting their ties and dresses, and all the while, the front row on my side remains painfully empty. I handed my phone to Allison before the ceremony began. "Keep this," I told her. "I don't want any distractions." She slipped it into her purse with a reassuring nod. Then Robert offered his arm as the music swelled. Walking down that aisle felt surreal. Faces turned, smiles bloomed, but all I could see was Jason waiting at the altar, his eyes full of love that steadied me. When Robert placed my hand in his, the ache of abandonment receded just enough to let joy slip in. Jason whispered, "You look incredible," and I believed him. The ceremony itself was brief yet profound. We had written our own vows, and when Jason promised to celebrate my victories as his own and to create a home where love was never conditional, tears streamed down my face. When it was my turn, I spoke of his kindness, his steady faith in me, his unwavering presence when everything else crumbled. The guests laughed and cried with us, and for a moment I forgot who wasn't there. Rings were exchanged, the pronouncement was made, and when Jason kissed me, the applause drowned out the silence I had carried for so long. The reception followed in a hall strung with twinkling lights, tables adorned with flowers, music filling the air. Jason's family made sure I never felt the absence of my own. His mother danced with me, his sister Olivia toasted to our future, his father took my hand for the traditional father-daughter dance and whispered, "You are family now. That's what family does." The kindness nearly broke me, but in the best way. Naomi's absence, though, hung heavy like a shadow. No text, no call, just silence. Later, as Jason and I stood ready to cut the cake, I retrieved my phone from Allison's purse, not wanting to be completely cut off in case of an emergency. The three-tiered cake glistened under the lights, the photographer snapping pictures as Jason wrapped his hands around mine. He said with a grin, "Ready?" I nodded, and together we pressed the knife into the frosting. Guests clapped and cheered, but beneath the laughter I felt the buzz of my phone against my hip. I glanced down discreetly. A message from my mother. "We need to talk now." Beneath it, 36 missed calls from my parents and even Harper, all within the last hour. My stomach dropped. Jason noticed a change in my face. "What is it?" he asked quietly. I turned the screen toward him. He frowned. "Whatever it is, it can wait. This is our day. They made their choice." Part of me wanted to listen to him, to silence the phone and stay capone in the joy of the moment. But another part, the small voice that still longed for connection despite years of hurt, whispered, "What if something truly is wrong?" I excused myself, stepping into the quiet garden outside, the evening air cool against my flushed cheeks. With shaking hands, I dialed my mother's number. She answered instantly, her voice frantic, tearful. "Sophia, thank God. We've been trying to reach you for hours." My heart hammered. "I was getting married, Mom. What could possibly be so urgent?" Her reply left me reeling, the words twisting everything I thought I knew about this day, about my family, about my sister. "It's Harper," she cried. "Patrick called off the engagement in the middle of the party. He said he couldn't go through with it because Harper finally told him what she did to you." My mother's words echoed in my ears as if the world had tilted sideways. Patrick had called off Harper's engagement because of something she admitted doing to me? I pressed the phone harder against my ear, my voice low and trembling. "What do you mean? What did she do to me?" There was a pause filled only with my mother's ragged breathing before she confessed. "She lied, Sophia, about everything. She told us you didn't want us at your wedding, that you changed the date without telling us because you didn't want us to come. She showed us fake texts, messages she said were from you. She even intercepted your invitation before we ever saw it. We believed her." My knees gave out, and I sat heavily on a garden bench, the cool wood grounding me as my world spun. "You believed that?" I whispered,
After all the times I called, all the voicemails I left, you thought I would purposely exclude you from my own wedding?" My father's voice suddenly broke into the line, revealing they were both on speaker. "We should have questioned it. We should have called you directly." But she was convincing, Sophia. She cried. She begged us to understand how hurt she was that you had supposedly rejected us. We wanted to believe her. I closed my eyes, my free hand clutching my gown. "And Naomi?" I asked, dread building. "Why did she abandon me too?" Another heavy pause. My mother's voice cracked with shame. "Harper told Naomi that you had replaced her as maid of honor, that you only asked her out of pity and then chose someone else. She showed Naomi doctored messages, made it look like you didn't want her anymore. Naomi believed her and thought going to Harper's party would spare her embarrassment." My stomach twisted, bile rising at the cruelty of it all. Harper had not only sabotaged my wedding, but poisoned every relationship around me to ensure I stood alone. I sat frozen, the magnitude of her manipulation overwhelming. "Where is she now?" I finally asked. "She left after Patrick ended it," my mother whispered. "She hasn't answered our calls. We don't know where she went." "But Sophia, please, we are so sorry. We see it now. We failed you terribly, not just today, but for years." My father's voice cracked, a sound I had never heard before. "We thought we were doing the right thing, but we chose the easy path every time. Believing Harper's lies was easier than confronting the truth about how poorly we treated you." I wanted to scream, to hang up, to hurl the phone into the night, but instead I sat silently as tears burned my eyes. "You missed my wedding," I said finally, my voice hard. "You believed lies instead of me. You abandoned me on the most important day of my life." My mother sobbed. "We know, and we don't expect forgiveness, but we needed you to know the truth." My father added softly, "Can we see you tonight? Even just for a few minutes, please." I looked back through the window into the reception hall, where Jason twirled me earlier, where laughter still rang out, where guests toasted to our future. They had no idea the storm raging just outside. "We'll be back at the hotel around 11, I said finally. "Meet us in the lobby." I ended the call before I could change my mind. Jason appeared moments later, concern etched on his face. "What's going on? You've been out here a while." I told him everything, watching his jaw tighten, his eyes flash with anger and disbelief. "She fabricated texts? She tricked everyone into abandoning you? Sophia, that isn't just sibling jealousy. That's cruelty calculated down to the last detail." I nodded, too exhausted to speak. "Do you really want to meet them tonight? We can wait until after the honeymoon." I shook my head. "I need closure. I can't carry this unanswered." He took my hands firmly. "Then we'll face them together." The rest of the reception passed in a blur. I smiled, I danced, I posed for photos, but my mind kept circling back to the truth I had just learned. Harper had engineered every heartbreak of this wedding. At 10:45, Jason and I slipped away under a shower of rose petals, the night air crisp as we drove back to the hotel. My stomach was a knot as we sat in the lobby waiting. At 11:15, my parents walked in, their faces drawn, eyes red from crying. My mother rushed forward but stopped short when I stepped back. Jason suggested we move into a small meeting room off the lobby for privacy. The four of us stood in silence until my father finally spoke. "Sophia, we don't expect forgiveness. What we did was unforgivable, but we are so deeply sorry." I stared at them, my voice sharp. "Sorry doesn't change that you missed my wedding, or that you believed Harper's lies without even asking me once." My mother nodded, tears streaming. "You're right. There is nothing we can say to justify it. We failed you, today and for years." I asked a question that had haunted me since childhood. Why was it so easy for you to believe I didn't want you there? What kind of relationship did you think we had that made that believable?
My father dropped his gaze. Because we knew, deep down, we had failed you long before this. We favored Harper. We missed your milestones. We knew you carried resentment, and part of us believed we deserved rejection. His honesty, though painful, rang true. My mother added, "We were cowards. Believing Harper was easier than facing the truth about how much we hurt you. And she's our daughter too. We never imagined she would lie like this." I looked at them, seeing not authority figures, but two flawed people crumbling under guilt. "I can't forgive you tonight," I said finally, my voice steady, though my heart raced. "I don't know if I ever fully can. Missing my wedding is something that can't be undone. But if you're truly committed to change, if you mean it, then maybe we can try to rebuild something new." Relief flooded their faces. My father nodded vigorously. "Anything. Therapy, accountability, whatever it takes." I added firmly, "Harper needs help too. This goes beyond rivalry. She needs professional help." They both agreed without hesitation. The conversation stretched into the early hours, painful but raw. Years of silence finally spoken aloud. There was no magic reconciliation, no group embrace that healed decades in an instant. But something shifted. A door that had always been closed cracked open slightly. When Jason and I finally retreated to our room, drained but strangely at peace, he squeezed my hand. "Are you okay?" I considered the question carefully before answering. "Not yet," I said softly, "but maybe I will be."
6 months slipped by after the wedding, though the sting of that day never fully faded. Jason and I settled into married life in our small Boston apartment, sharing quiet breakfasts before work, long walks in the evenings, and weekends filled with laughter as we discovered what it meant to truly be partners. Our honeymoon in Greece had been a gift we desperately needed, a 2-week escape where the blue of the sea washed away, at least temporarily, the bitterness of betrayal. We explored ruins older than history, swam in crystalline coves, and for a time pretended the rest of the world did not exist. But when we came home, reality waited at the door like an unwelcome guest. My parents, to their credit, kept their promise. They found a therapist and began weekly sessions, sometimes together, sometimes alone. After weeks of urging, they asked if I would join them for family therapy. At first, I resisted, unwilling to relive the wounds, but something inside me recognized that if change was ever going to happen, I had to at least try. So, on Thursday evenings, I began sitting across from them in Dr. Patterson's office, a family therapist who specialized in estrangement and adult children of neglect. The sessions were raw. My mother wept as she admitted to years of dismissing me. My father spoke haltingly about how much easier it had always been to focus on Harper because she demanded attention while I never did. Dr. Patterson reminded us constantly that healing was not linear, that setbacks would come, but that progress was measured in willingness to stay in the room. It was during one of those sessions that Harper re-entered the picture. She had disappeared after Patrick ended the engagement, leaving my parents frantic. 3 days after the wedding, she finally called them from a hotel room where she had been hiding, ashamed and frightened by the collapse of the life she had tried so hard to orchestrate. My parents convinced her to return home and immediately placed her in therapy. For weeks, I refused to see her. The idea of sitting across from the sister who had deliberately ruined my wedding day felt unbearable. But 2 months later, I agreed to meet her in a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The confident, sparkling sister who had always commanded rooms seemed smaller. Her shoulders hunched, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. She sat across from me, fingers trembling around a coffee cup she didn't drink from. "I don't know where to begin," she said finally, her voice so quiet I barely heard it over the hum of the cafe. "Sorry seems so inadequate." My throat tightened. "Why?" I asked simply.
Why would you go to such lengths to destroy my wedding day?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Jealousy," she admitted, "but not the simple kind. I grew up thinking I had to be perfect to keep mom and dad's attention. They praised me, yes, but they always compared me to you. Why can't you be more focused like Sophia? Why can't you find a stable career like your sister?" I was their star, but it was conditional. I had to keep dazzling them to stay worthy. And then you got to build a real life. You had friends who loved you, accomplishments no one could deny, a relationship that wasn't a performance. When Jason proposed and I saw how happy you were, I couldn't bear it. Patrick's proposal felt hollow in comparison. I wanted what you had, and when I couldn't have it, I wanted to tear it down. Her honesty twisted something inside me. I had always assumed our parents favored her without condition, but hearing how she had felt the pressure to perform complicated the narrative. Still, I couldn't excuse her actions. "You fabricated texts, Harper. You convinced everyone I loved to abandon me on my wedding day. That's not just jealousy, that's cruelty." She nodded rapidly, tears streaming. "I know, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how twisted it was, and I'm getting help. My therapist says I need to separate who I really am from the persona I built. I don't want to live like that anymore." Our first meeting ended awkwardly, full of silences, but it was a start. Over the following months, we met again, each time a little less strained. She eventually moved out of our parents' home and found work as an administrative assistant, her first real job that didn't involve being on stage. She seemed humbled, fragile, but perhaps for the first time, authentic. My relationship with my parents also began to shift. My mother started calling to ask about my work, my life with Jason, not just about Harper. My father sent me articles related to biomedical engineering and asked genuine questions. For the first time in decades, I felt seen. Not perfectly, not completely, but truly seen. The hardest relationship to mend, though, was with Naomi. When she discovered the truth about Harper's lies, she was devastated. She sent flowers, emails, long letters apologizing for believing Harper's fabrications, begging for a chance to explain. For weeks, I ignored her. The betrayal cut too deep. This was the friend who had promised to stand beside me, and she had chosen my sister's party instead. Finally, after many attempts, I agreed to a phone call. Her voice was thick with regret. "I should have called you directly. I should have trusted our years of friendship. Instead, I believed Harper's lies without giving you a chance. That is my greatest regret. I know I broke your trust, and I will spend however long it takes trying to rebuild it." I listened quietly, then told her the truth. "You believed the worst of me without even asking. That hurt more than anything." She didn't argue. She simply said, "I know. I am so sorry." Rebuilding trust with Naomi was slow. We started with the occasional text, then coffee once a month. The easy closeness we once had never snapped back, but there was space for something new, slower, more cautious. In the meantime, Allison, the friend who had stepped in on my wedding day, became unexpectedly close. We began meeting for lunches, she joined Jason and I for dinners, movie nights, and gradually she became a permanent part of my circle, a reminder that loyalty can come from the most unexpected places. As the months passed, small cracks appeared in the wall of resentment I had built towards my family. For the first time, I wondered if something new might grow there, but the question remained. Was it enough to truly heal, or were we only papering over wounds too deep to close? The first anniversary of our wedding arrived quietly, almost without warning, and I realized how much had changed in just 12 months. Jason and I hosted a small dinner in our apartment, nothing extravagant, just close friends and family who had proven their loyalty when everything else fell apart. My parents came, bringing with them a photo album they had painstakingly assembled of my childhood. Pictures they had once overlooked, now pasted carefully with captions of pride. It was their way of acknowledging the years they had missed, though no album could erase the sting of those absences. Harper arrived too, subdued, carrying a thoughtful gift and a tentative smile. She no longer sparkled with the same performance-driven glow I had grown up resenting. She seemed quieter, more grounded, and though I didn't fully trust the transformation, I allowed her space at the table. Over dinner, Jason stood, tapped his glass, and announced our news. We were expecting our first child in June. Joy erupted in the room. My mother crying tears of happiness, my father beaming with pride, Harper hugging me and whispering that I would be an amazing mother. For the first time in memory, their words felt genuine, not staged for an audience. But healing is complicated. In the months that followed, therapy continued to challenge us. Dr. Patterson often reminded me that forgiveness was not a single act, but a process. Some weeks I left the sessions hopeful, other times furious, reliving memories of graduations missed and achievements ignored. My parents tried hard, calling to ask about prenatal appointments, sending small gifts for the baby, even joining Jason and me for dinner. Yet, every so often, the old patterns peek through. My mother slipping into long stories about Harper, my father praising her small steps as though they were monumental, while mine were acknowledged with a nod. Each time it happened, I spoke up, my voice firmer than it had ever been as a child. That hurts. I need you to see me too. To their credit, they listened. They apologized. They corrected themselves. It was not perfect, but it was progress. Harper's journey remained its own complicated thread. She continued therapy and slowly rebuilt a life independent of the pedestal our parents had kept her on for so long. She started working steadily, making friends outside of the performance world, and admitted she was still battling the urge to compare herself to me. It's hard to undo a lifetime of being told I was the star, she confessed once, her voice small. But I'm trying to live for myself now, not for applause. I nodded, acknowledging her effort, but reminding her softly, intentions don't erase harm, Harper. You hurt me deeply. I can't pretend it didn't happen. She didn't argue. She simply whispered, I know. That humility was new, and though I still kept my guard up, part of me wondered if maybe, slowly, we could build a different kind of sisterhood. Naomi's reappearance in my life was more tentative. She continued sending messages, asking to meet, but I hesitated. The betrayal of my maid of honor abandoning me on my wedding day was a wound that healed slower than any other. Eventually, I agreed to coffee. She showed up looking nervous, clutching a small wrapped gift. I know I don't deserve a second chance, but I miss you. I let Harper manipulate me because I didn't trust you the way I should have. That's on me. I listened, sipping my coffee slowly, weighing her words. I finally said, you believed the worst of me. That's not something that disappears overnight. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I'll wait as long as it takes. Just please don't shut me out completely. I didn't hug her that day, didn't promise reconciliation, but I left the cafe feeling that perhaps trust could be rebuilt brick by cautious brick. Meanwhile, Allison, the friend who had stepped in when Naomi vanished, became one of my closest confidants. She visited weekly, helped me shop for baby clothes, and never once made me feel like I was too much or not enough. Sometimes I looked at her and marveled at how someone who had once been a background character in my life had become essential, while people I thought irreplaceable had crumbled when tested. Life has a way of rearranging our circles, teaching us who belongs in the center. Pregnancy itself was both joy and challenge. Jason and I decorated the nursery together, painting the walls a soft shade of green, assembling a crib, and folding tiny onesies into drawers. At night, we lay in bed with his hand on my belly, marveling at the small kicks and flutters. Yet, even as we planned for new life, the shadow of old pain lingered. I often wondered what kind of family my child would be born into. Would my parents truly change enough to be loving grandparents? Could Harper be a trustworthy aunt? Or would history repeat itself, another generation caught in cycles of favoritism and neglect? I vowed to myself fiercely that it would not. My child would never question their worth. Dr. Patterson encouraged me to set boundaries now rather than later. She said, decide what role you want your family to play. Be clear. Protect your child from the uncertainty you endured. It was empowering advice, though frightening too. At one session, I told my parents directly, if you slip back into old patterns, if you ignore or dismiss my child the way you did me, I will not allow you to be part of their life. This is not a threat. It's a boundary. My mother cried, my father swallowed hard, but they both agreed. We won't let it happen again. I wanted to believe them, and for the first time in years, I almost did. On quiet nights, Jason and I spoke about the future. Are you happy with where things stand now? He asked one evening as we washed dishes together. I thought carefully before answering. I said, I'm at peace with it. It's not perfect. There are still moments when I feel the old ache, but it's different now. We're building something new, and that's enough. He dried a plate and leaned over to kiss my forehead. That's all I want, for you to feel free of that weight. Freedom, I realized, wasn't about forgetting the pain. It was about acknowledging it and choosing not to let it dictate the rest of my life. My wedding had been scarred by betrayal, but my marriage, my child, my chosen circle, that was where my true story would be written.
The final weeks of my pregnancy unfolded with a mixture of anticipation and quiet fear, the kind that sneaks into your heart late at night when the house is silent. Jason and I had prepared everything we could: the nursery painted, the car seat installed, the hospital bag packed neatly by the door. But no amount of preparation could calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. Some nights I lay awake, hand on my belly, wondering what kind of world I was bringing this child into. Would they know unconditional love from the people who had failed to give it to me? Or would I spend my life shielding them from the patterns that had scarred my own childhood? I promised myself again and again that the cycle would break with me. When labor finally began, it was early morning and the sun had barely risen. Jason drove us to the hospital with his hand gripping mine the entire way, his calm presence steadying me even as contractions stole my breath. Hours later, with sweat on my forehead and tears streaming down my cheeks, I heard the first cry of our baby. A daughter. Tiny, perfect, fierce in her own right. They placed her on my chest, and I felt a love so pure it hurt. Jason kissed my hair, whispering, "She's beautiful, Sophia, just like her mother." In that moment, everything else, Harper's betrayal, my parents' absence, Naomi's failure, faded. This child was my new beginning. My parents visited 2 days later. I held my daughter protectively as they entered the hospital room, their faces nervous, their hands clutching flowers and stuffed animals. My mother's eyes filled with tears the moment she saw the baby. "She's perfect," she whispered, reaching out tentatively. For a long moment, I hesitated, every memory of neglect flashing before me. But then I placed my daughter in her grandmother's arms, not as forgiveness, but as a chance. My father leaned over, smiling awkwardly but genuinely. "Sophia, we want to do better this time. We will do better." Watching them cradle the baby, I felt both guarded and strangely hopeful. This was their opportunity to prove, with actions, not words, that they could change. Harper came later,
quiet and subdued, carrying a small handmade blanket. She sat in the corner at first, as if afraid to intrude. When I offered the baby to her, she was shocked. "Are you sure?" she asked. I nodded. She held my daughter gently, tears slipping down her face. "I can't undo what I did to you, but maybe I can be someone different for her." Her honesty cut through me, painful and tentative, but real. I didn't answer with words, only nodded, because forgiveness still felt too far. The months that followed were some of the hardest and most beautiful of my life. Sleepless nights blurred into long days of feedings, diaper changes, and lullabies. Jason and I stumbled through it together, clumsy but determined, laughing through exhaustion, crying through joy. My parents visited often, careful not to overstep, always asking how they could help. They brought meals, folded laundry, rocked the baby to sleep while I showered or napped. Small acts, but each one proof that they were trying to rewrite their role in my life. Harper, too, showed up quietly, stopping by with groceries or babysitting for an hour while I napped. She no longer demanded the spotlight. Instead, she seemed intent on learning how to exist without it. Naomi remained a complicated ache in my heart. She reached out again after the birth, sending a long letter about how much she wanted to meet the baby, how sorry she still was. I hesitated for weeks, but eventually agreed to see her in a park one afternoon. She cried the moment she saw us, apologizing again and again. She held my daughter with trembling arms, her tears falling onto the baby's blanket. "I know I broke something between us, but I want to rebuild it, even if it takes the rest of my life." I watched her with guarded eyes, unsure if trust could ever return. But I admitted quietly, "You were like a sister to me. That's why it hurt so much." She nodded, not defending herself, only holding on to the child she had once nearly abandoned by abandoning me. Allison, on the other hand, remained a constant. She visited weekly, bringing coffee, holding the baby while I showered, reminding me that loyalty is sometimes found in places you least expect. She never asked for credit, never compared herself to anyone else. She simply showed up. And in that consistency, I found more comfort than I had ever felt with people who shared my blood. As the seasons changed, I found myself slowly breathing easier. I began to realize that healing didn't mean pretending the past never happened. It meant acknowledging it, learning from it, and setting boundaries that kept history from repeating. I didn't fully forgive my parents, but I allowed them to be grandparents. I didn't fully forgive Harper, but I let her be an aunt. And I didn't fully forgive Naomi, but I cracked the door open to see if friendship could grow again. Most importantly, I learned that my worth was never defined by their choices. It was defined by the love I created, the family Jason and I were building, the daughter who looked up at me with eyes that said I was enough. One evening, as Jason and I sat rocking the baby to sleep, he asked me softly, "Do you ever regret letting them back in?" I thought about it for a long moment. "No," I said finally, "not because what they did was okay, it never was, but because I need to know I gave them the chance to change. And if they fail again, I'll protect her from that. But if they succeed, maybe she'll have what I didn't." He kissed my forehead, whispering, "You're stronger than you know." Strength, I realized, wasn't about never breaking. It was about breaking and still choosing to love, to try again, to build something better out of the rubble. My daughter would grow up never doubting that she mattered. That promise was my gift to her. And in some way, my gift to the girl I once was. The little girl who sat quietly at dinners while her sister was toasted, who cried when her parents skipped her graduation, who thought she had to earn love that should have been unconditional. That girl deserved more. And now, through my choices, she would finally have it.
Years slipped by faster than I expected, measured not by wounds anymore, but by milestones of a growing child. My daughter learned to crawl, then walk, then ran laughing through our apartment as Jason chased her with outstretched arms. She spoke her first word, Mama, and the sound of it dissolved every shadow I had ever carried from my childhood. Watching her grow reminded me daily of the promise I had made that she would never question her worth, never sit in silence wondering if she was enough. I poured myself into that vow, and Jason stood beside me, equal in love and effort, creating a home where laughter was abundant and tears were met with comfort instead of dismissal. My parents became steady visitors. At first, they came nervously, as if afraid I might push them away at any moment, but over time they grew more natural, showing up to babysit, bringing books, singing lullabies. My mother often cried quietly after holding her granddaughter, perhaps grieving the years she had failed me, perhaps grateful for a second chance. My father, once so absent from my ceremonies and milestones, made a point never to miss anything her small life offered. He attended every birthday, every preschool recital, every silly tea party she invited him to. Actions mattered more than words, and though the child in me still bore scars, the mother in me allowed those new actions to mean something. Harper's journey remained complicated. She was still in therapy, still confronting the hollow identity she had built from years of applause and favoritism. But she was different now. She came to family dinners quietly, often sitting on the floor to build towers with my daughter, her laughter less polished, more genuine. She apologized often, sometimes too often, and though forgiveness was not a gift I could give fully, I acknowledged her efforts. "Keep doing the work," I told her once when she thanked me for letting her spend time with my daughter. "Prove with consistency that you've changed." She nodded, no longer defensive, just earnest. In her own way, she was learning to be authentic. Naomi and I walked a slower road. The betrayal of my wedding day had carved too deep a wound to heal quickly. Yet over time, we rebuilt a cautious friendship. We met for coffee every few weeks, sometimes with my daughter in tow. She never pushed, never demanded more than I was willing to give, and in that patience, I found space to trust again, if only in small increments. Still, there was a distance that remained, an invisible scar between us, and maybe that was okay. Not all friendships returned to what they once were, but that didn't mean they couldn't evolve into something different. Allison, on the other hand, never left my side. She had stepped into the role of maid of honor when no one else did, and from that day forward, she became my sister in spirit. She was there for the baby's first steps, she joined our family vacations, and sometimes I wondered how I had ever gone so long without realizing how important she was meant to be in my life. Life has a way of revealing true loyalties when everything else falls apart. On quiet nights, after our daughter was asleep, Jason and I often reflected on the journey that had brought us here. "Do you ever think about that day?" he asked one evening as we sat on the balcony, the city lights shimmering below. I knew which day he meant. My wedding day. The day of abandonment and betrayal. The day Harper's lies nearly destroyed me. The day I learned who truly stood by me. "Yes," I admitted. "Sometimes it still hurts. Sometimes I still feel the sting of those empty chairs." He took my hand, warm and steady. "And yet," he said, "look at what came from it. We built something stronger, something real. You found your voice, set your boundaries, and now our daughter will grow up in a home where love isn't conditional." His words settled into me like truth. Pain had shaped me, but it hadn't defined me. The scars remained, yes, but they were no longer open wounds. They were reminders that I had survived, that I had chosen a different path. When I looked at my daughter, I understood something I hadn't on my wedding day. Families are not fixed. They are living, breathing relationships that can fracture and heal, shift and evolve. Forgiveness, too, was not a moment, but a process. I had not erased the past, I never could, but I had learned to carry it differently,
lighter, with boundaries that kept me safe. My parents were not suddenly perfect. Harper was not suddenly redeemed. Naomi was not suddenly trustworthy again. But all of them, in their own imperfect ways, were trying. And I had learned that trying, sustained over time, mattered. On our 5th anniversary, Jason and I renewed our vows in a small gathering. This time, the front row was filled. Our daughter sitting proudly in her grandmother's lap, my father snapping photos, Harper standing quietly to the side with tears in her eyes. Allison and Naomi beside each other, both smiling. It wasn't the perfect family picture I had once dreamed of as a child. It was messy, patched together, scarred by history, but it was real, and it was mine. Afterwards, as we stood under the twinkle of string lights, Jason kissed my forehead and whispered, "We made it." I smiled, holding his hand tightly. Yes, we did. Looking back now, I realize that the greatest lesson I learned was that healing isn't about erasing pain, but about transforming it into strength. Forgiveness isn't about excusing betrayal, but about choosing not to let it define your future. And love, the kind that matters, isn't measured by blood, but by presence, by who shows up when the world falls apart. On my wedding day, I thought I had lost everything. In reality, I lost illusions, and in their place, I built a life that was stronger, truer, and filled with love I could trust. So when my daughter runs into my arms and asks if she is my favorite, I kneel down, look into her bright eyes, and tell her the truth. You don't have to be anyone's favorite. You are enough just as you are. That is the cycle I am breaking. That is the gift I'm giving her. And maybe, just maybe, that is the redemption hidden inside the heartbreak of the day my family chose my sister over me. Because from that breaking came clarity, strength, and the unwavering decision to create a different future.